Thank you. Namo Namaha. Thank you so much for your generous introduction. That's lovely, sweet. Thank you. So, honored guests, faculty members, beloved students, I'm always, I think something happens to my bloodstream when I meet students because I think they are the next generation. So, fellow speakers and friends who have gathered here today, my special greetings to you, Joshi ji. When I left IGNCA, I thought that was the closure. But then when you came in, it was really wonderful that I realized that there's no closure when hearts and minds meet. So thank you for having me here. And of course, Srimati Kamboj ji, yes, it's my old organization, and it's wonderful to be part of it. And of course, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers, Reela, Hota, the young dancer, the Apsara, the spirit behind this, and my dear young colleague from JNU, Manindra ji. Thank you for this wonderful introduction that you gave, because I think this is a very, very important historical moment. This is the moment where East and West should come together. And India's great asset of philosophies, of art, of culture should come into focus. So thank you for calling me, for inviting me. So as we gather to celebrate the rich tapestry of ancient arts, we also have the unique opportunity to explore how the interrelationship of arts and aesthetics are a tool for healing and can enhance our understanding and appreciation of these cultural expressions. Now, a lot has been said, and I think I'm not going to say anything very, very much, but go a little bit technical, being a scholar and a boring scholar, or whatever you may, however way you may address me. Now, I want to make a statement in a turbulent time of climate change. You see, unless we contemporize our knowledge, we are not going to appreciate it. And I think it's very important to say that we are going through a very troubled age. Threatening age of artificial intelligence, aapne jiski baat ki thi abhi, that is looming large. Art and art alone, as I feel, stand out today as our only savior that can save humankind from destruction. And I think we'll come to why it is so up to the end of my paper, when I can discuss the various tenets. I say this with conviction and confidence because war, violence, and perils of modern life are orthogonal to peace. And art is peace. Have you ever heard of any conflict historically where people are fighting about art? Yes. In the modern age when the Buddha images were desecrated. But that is a modern age of violence. But have you ever heard? You read your history. There have been no fights because of some painting or a sculpture or a monument. This is an amazing contribution to civilization. And it is one of the greatest forces that unites humanity. You don't have to know the language, English or French or German, in order to admire a painting or a sculpture. Or music for that matter. Music more so. It's totally universal. So let me begin by unpacking A.K. Kumaraswamy's classic statement. It is not that an artist is a special kind of person, but every person is a special kind of artist. Very famous thing that Kumaraswamy said. Kumaraswamy refers to the extraordinary creative potential of humans when he states that every person is a special kind of artist. He implies that creating art is not a mind trick. Maybe you have to be, some kind of a magical power, but something we all possess innately, regardless of caste, race, gender, geographical location or age. We all respond to the creative call of the soul, the creative impulse. This phenomena is universal, as where the hand and the heart meet, seeing the beautiful or Saundarya. Saundarya is Shubha in the Indian context, always auspicious. Even when we see an ugly image of a divinity is suspicious of some, So Saundarya is Shubha, is beautiful, is a positive universal human value. And from the dawn of civilization, we learn about the cave painters, of the hunters and gatherers who were untutored but scratched the surfaces of rocks and caves to trace abstract human and animal figures to create their kind of art. To make sense or to make meaning of the world around them. In this sense, all of us are born artists, if we take that definition. But at the same time, we need to address the question that the artist is a special kind of a person. Okay? Because as the saying goes, the pot exists in the lump of soil, words exist in books, but it takes a sculptor to create a pot and a poet like Sukriti to create poetry, or a poet. So it's all there, but artists are also very special. An artist is also an extraordinary person, one who is born with exceptional talent, has a powerful creative imagination and an innate or acquired talent to conceptualize or make creative works. Art is an indefinable category as it covers many dimensions and no single description will do justice. The question of what art is really means what life is. Because art can, it's everywhere. So art and life are inseparable and mutually sustainable. The other aspect which we need to accept is art has a remarkable power to instantly connect people beyond their cultural and social boundaries, whether through visual art, music, dance, literature, or any form of artistic expression. It fosters shared experience using the language of art that needs no lengthy verbal explanation. Thus, the arts serve as a spontaneous universal language that words are unable to convey. Now, what I propose to do today is I shall begin by summarizing the dominant features of Indian artistic tradition, which I think is already been very well articulated before me, but I'll just elaborate further on that. Indian art was not created primarily for aesthetic delight or for entertainment, but to seek meaning hidden in art. It is a form of visual metaphysics, a yoga, a dharma, where the artist strives to attain the supreme and profound state of identity and unity with cosmic consciousness. Because when we talk of Brahman and Atman, it is cosmic consciousness we are speaking about. And these are, of course, technical words to describe the same reality. It is a path of self-realization. The consistent aim has been to represent the ideal type. May I see the first slide, please? Of representation, the truth or satya, underlying phenomenal appearances. The envisioned reality is represented through unique language of symbols, metaphors, and allegories. Okay, so I wanted to just show you one image, starting. So here we have a representation of an idealized body. It's a figure, standing figure in a dance posture, adorned with beautiful ornaments and sloping shoulders, narrow waist. But what is interesting in the balance and rhythm in the figure. And what is even more interesting in this image of a dancer is the relationship of the sensuous and the sublime. And it is something which has been debated, How come Indian art is so erotic? It's not erotic. It is sensuous. Because erotic essence is part and parcel of the divine. It's not something outside. And all the debates today in art history are about how the West looks at. When the Western gaze looks at our sculptures and our paintings, they divide the world. They say this is secular, this is sacred. Now, Cambridge has made a very interesting remark, and I'm quoting here, Indian life was never rent by the Western dichotomy of religious belief and worldly practice, because both were integrated. And this is a very, very important issue in understanding India as a whole. Sensuality, profanity, world, as well as profound ideas, sacredness, divinity, coming all together, and forming one whole. And the other thing which is interesting in this is the idealistic portrayal of the body. Uski bhi baat aapne Kamboj ji ki thi. And of course, A.K. Kumaraswamy has given beautiful references that how these images are coming from dhyana, from contemplation. And these images are first is a dhyan shloka, a verse describing the image, and then the artist portrays it. And here you see that it's an idealized image, because when you compare these such beautiful sculptures with, let's say, Western, images of David or Venus or whatever, you see what is predominant there is the bones and what's it? I say biceps. It's kind of full of muscles, muscular. But here it's idealized. And one of my favorite phrases from Stella Kramrisch is, she says, "Body is blown by air." What a beautiful say. Body is blown by air. And if I may add a parenthesis to it, it's prana. Air is prana. It's pranic. You can feel the prana of the image. So this idea that, that it's an idealized form is one of the essential features. Okay, next. Can we see the next? The other important thing about Indian art is that it does not state, but plays on the art of suggestion, pratika, lakshana, signs and symbols. The reality of life illustrated through its unique language of symbols, metaphors, rhythms, orderly movements, allegories, colors and sounds. So sometimes a great idea in art can be presented in a very minimalist way. Like in the Tantras, the Bindu. It's a dimensionless point, but it is a potential state of creation. And you find it right in the center of the Tantra. So this whole Asian gaze, I would say, is very different. And we find that when we compare our works with Zen painting or early Chinese painting, many aspects of classical art are very close to that. They portray a Japanese work. They also use a lot of signs and symbols. Circle is the cosmos. Just a simple symbol. So this is a very important aspect, pratika, lakshana, and here there's a beautiful image, of course, of Ardhanarishwara, and minimal signage that the wonderful sculpture has casted it. Okay, then we go to the third principle, which I think is extremely important, which has been spoken of before me. One of the foundational principles of Indian art and aesthetics is that all arts are interrelated. Together they are a powerful medium that can affect our aesthetic sensibilities, emotions, intuitive self, and brain's two hemispheres. That's your subject. Yeah. The left hemisphere is responsible for cognition, logic, and language, and the right hemisphere is responsible for creativity and intuition. Now, this whole idea of how the arts are integrated has been discussed over and over again in many Shilpa texts. In a conversation between sage Markandeya and Vajra people, the sage instructs his disciple that the rules of painting cannot be understood without the science of dancing, Nrita. And the practice of dancing cannot exist without one being acquainted with music. Without music, dancing cannot exist. जैसे आपका Thakur, उसको आप अलग कर दें तो क्या बचेगा? You just have, a posture. Yes, it won't impinge on the senses. In other words, the visual, the oral, and the performative arts are, and also the written word, the literary, are inextricably interlinked. The correlation of all arts is clearly explained in the Vishnu Dharmotar Tantra. An informative passage of which this Puran explains how all arts correlate and stresses the need to know all of them. Can you just show the next slide, please? Oh, okay, this is just something which I just spoke about. Can we just go further? Interrelationship of all arts, yes. This is a passage. Can you show the next slide to this? Yeah. This is really a Markandeya and Vajra conversation, and I wish some of you read it because it's very authentic and it's quoted by all the scholars. And I think this sort of brings it together very simply. Now, okay, fine, all the arts are integrated, but do we have any examples to show that? I'm asking the youngsters here, do we have any examples to show that? Yes, we certainly do. The Britishers claimed, this is the way I look at it, that Indian Railways united India. It's a Western gaze. What united India? It was the railways. आप जाइए कश्मीर से जाके, बिल्कुल down south on the tip of India you can go and we are in some way united. Anyway, the indigenous view of an art historian as me, very humble art historian, it is not the railways, but even a cursory glance at the role of two great epics of India, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, that unite India through the arts. Okay, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana is one of the finest historical examples of the power of literature. Because when we talk of visual arts, we forget literature. Although visual arts is based on literature, in especially classical arts, literature nahi hoga, dhyan shloka nahi honge. So how are you going to present what you were talking about Ganesh or any of the deities and gods? Because all the visualizations are in the text, or for that matter, even a work like the Gita Govinda and many others like that. The Ramayana, the adventures of Ram, attributed to the poet sage Valmiki, exhibits the immortal power of storytelling. Through a literary and aesthetic genre of a text, the greatness of poetry, it retells the story of Ram in a poetic composition where all our human emotions are transformed into aesthetic delight using the art of literary composition and storytelling. The most dramatic impact the Ramayana has had on India's culture and civilization is in the arts. The epic poem is represented in writing. Can we see the next slide, please? Here you have, this is a page from the Ramayana, one of the manuscripts, and then how it is expressed in the Mewar Ramayana, one of the images, and in painting. So it's expressed in through painting, and in painting through various genres of painting, from north to south, whether it is the Pahari image or whether it is the Bhasholi, whether it is down south and frescoes, manuscript paintings, sculptures, etc., etc. Many different genres of painting. Film, theatre, dance, religious performance, congregational singing, chanting, and more recently, digital media. So you see that one great literary work. And I find that the same thing is happening to Tulsidasa's Ramayana. It's just amazing what's happening in Mauritius and other places, how they identify with it, and and there is a great explosion of creativity around these texts. To tell stories of myths is not simply an imaginative story. The narrative is a metaphor for what lies in the deep recesses of our human consciousness. There's something we should know, that myths or itihas, what we say, so many myths in India, in the Purans, these are not just stories for entertainment. They tell us something about human consciousness, some aspect of human consciousness, using all our senses, our eyes, ears, speech, movement, and human emotions. The enchanting narrative and the historical unifying role of the power of myth are known to humankind. As far as India goes, no other ancient epic has played an assimilative role in leveling geographies from north to south, east to west. The text would not have survived if the literary genre had been inflexible. We have 300 kinds of Ramayans, and non-adaptive to our tastes, emotions, ethos, and dharmic values. It's all about dharma. It assimilates ethnic and linguistic diversity and local cultures across India and beyond this shows to express the battle between good and evil, representing characters, aspirations, and anxieties. There's a reference to holy sites, forests, landscapes of the subcontinent and communities. The peripatetic life of Ram, Lakshman, and Sita and their life in exile give a pen picture of vivid descriptions of India's natural history. So one text giving us so much. You have spoken about ecology, how it extends. So, and we all, of course, we know by the works of A.K. Ramanujan that the story of Ram Katha has undergone several versions of retelling. Now, Dr. Vatsayan writes that the story of Ram seems to bewitch and hypnotize generations of Asians from countries with different religions and literary and sculptural traditions. Its popularity exists in various media, of course, comic films, strips, feature films, etc. What is even more astounding is the diffusion of the Ramayana all over the world and the development of over 300 versions of archetypal epic of Valmiki, including Buddhist, Jain, folk, tribal renderings, which has attracted people far-flung countries such as Burma, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesian archipelago, and Bali. You see how it travels. So there is a continuity in the story, but there are also subversions and defiance. This is part of the literary genre. Next, I just want to show you images. Okay, Ram, Sita, Lakshman is a Kangra painting. Okay, next, just to get you a sense of, this is from Angkor Wat. Yeah, Ramayana narrative is carved in stone in Angkor Wat, Cambodia. Next, then of course dancing to the tune of Geet Ramayana. Then next, then you have Balinese Ramayana, dance drama, beautiful, absolutely stunning. And I've seen it also in Thailand, which is just amazing. Next. Then of course we have it in theatre. And the story of Ram being enacted in his Ram Leelas, we've grown with it from childhood. Next. And then of course Ram Nagar's Ram Leela. Nothing like that exists anywhere in the world. Because it goes on for 33 days or something, over 30 days. And the landscape is the different parts of the landscape are the stage. So it is quite amazing. Next, yeah, and of course Ramayana film. Next, and of course various chanting and singing with great musicians. So here you have the integration of all the arts. And one can go to it. Okay, now let's moving on to the next concept, which has been spoken about, but I just want to say a little more. Sages and scholars who wrote on Indian aesthetics state that art is a quest for the true self. And they distinguish between outer appearances and the interior image accessible to the eye of contemplation, between the gross and subtle, authentic and unreal, and the unity between micro-atma and the ultimate reality, Brahman. The relationship between outward appearances and interior image of the self is crucial to the understanding of the philosophy underlying the Indian arts. Discourse on the spiritual essence of the true self is traceable to the earliest layers of our textual history, the Upanishads. It's just amazing how arts have absorbed all that. Of course, Natya Shastra is a very early text also. A narrative on the mystic teaching of the true self describes a dialogue between Prajapati, who's known as the Lord of creation, and the Asura, Virochena. It comes in Chandogya Upanishad, by the way. Prajapati speculates on the nature of the self. वो अपने को पूछ रहे हैं कि what is the essence of the self, which has no sin, no aptitude, no death, no sorrow, no hunger, and no thirst. It has unfailing desires and will, knowing that true self one realizes and attains all the world and all the desires. This self is the highest, and this self is Brahman. This is Prajapati's monologue. Now, Prajapati, extremely intelligent, he instructs Indira. There's always a battle going on between Indra, God Indra, and Prajapati, and the Asuras, the demons, to adorn their bodies and see the reflection in a water bowl. And he asked them, what do you see? They said, we are well attired, well adorned, and this indeed is the true self. Now Virochan tells his friends about the mystic teaching of the self. The self is to be adored, and by adorning the self you can attain the world. Because that's what they see in the reflection. Okay. Then, as Indira and Virachana were both kings attached to enjoyment, the discourse says that the ignorant deck their bodies and think that they know the self. It's a wonderful pun. Prajapati enlightens them about the perishable veneer of the corporeal self and the eternal matrix, and states that the authentic self is immortal and bodiless. Anything embodied is within the range of the desirable and the non-desirable, and desire does not touch what has become unembodied and disembodied. Pure, unsullied consciousness is the true self. But in this explanation, as we are scholars, one question is yet to be examined. How does the cosmology of creation resolve the conflict or separation between embodied and the disembodied? These are two separate issues. This is explained in the Katha Upanishad, as I see it, by the seminal concept of avyakta and vyakta, the unmanifest reality and vyakta which adheres to the formulation of the one as formless, unformed, arupa, which takes the form of rupa pratirupa. These are the exact words used, corresponding in every form. This is one way in which they deal with the separation philosophically. And A.K. Kumar Swami then has commented, and I just say it in my own words, the subjective and the objective are not irreconcilable categories to the exclusion of the other. This is a very important aspect in India. The reality and elemental senses meet in the unity of being. You see? So again, consciousness has both. And of course, one can go on this, but I want to move on. So this philosophy of unity and Atma-Brahman equation underlies the theory of aesthetics propounded by our ancient sage scholars in the Upanishads. It is implicit in no less an authority than Bharata Muni's celebrated author of Natya Shastra, which is dated to 500 BCE, whose views on arts are firmly rooted in the Advaita philosophy of the Upanishads. A discourse on the nature of reality and its relation to our highest aim in life through arts undergirds the production and goal of art. Therefore, again, Kapilaji states that mere externality, skills, artistry, and technique alone do not reflect the Hindu theory of aesthetics. बहुत अच्छे कपड़े पहन लिए, बहुत अच्छा सजावट कर ली, अच्छा जैसे आपने कहा internalization. So I'm just tying up with that. As the quest for spiritual and self-transformation is quintessential, which is the aim of this whole wonderful agenda that you put forward. Now, the words of T. Bala Saraswati, the great celebrity of Bharatnatyam, are pertinent here. What did she say? Bharatnatyam is an art that consecrates the body. It's just amazing. Great dancer, great, absolutely. Which is considered to be of no value in itself. The yogi controlling his breath and modifying his body, these are her words, acquires the halo of sanctity. Even so, the dancer who dissolves her identity in rhythm and music makes her body an instrument, at least for the duration of the dance, for the experience and expression of the spirit or consciousness. It is not surprising that she compares dance to the Hindu temple. Very beautiful analogy. The Bharatnatyam recital is structured like a great temple. We enter through the Gopuram, outer hall of Aliruppu, cross the Ardha Mandapam, half-bay hall of Jatiswaram, and then Mandapa, great hall of Shabdam, and enter the holy precinct of the deity in the Varnam or the Sanctum Sanctorium of the temple. This is the place, the space which gives the dancer expansive scope to revel in the rhythm, moods and music of the dance and identify with reality. So how she sees the levels, each level of dance then ultimately leads you to the Sanctum Sanctorium, which is the inner self. The history of art is concerned with universal applicability of arts. All forms of the individual arts of literary composition like poetry, drama, dance, music, architecture, sculpture, and painting are interrelated. And it's interesting what Kapila J.D. says, here is a theory of aesthetics that is distinctive and indigenous to our soil and can be clearly distinguished from imperialistic Western theories in the post-Renaissance period in the West. Okay, now I move to the last point. Rasa Bhava Kaha. Now, no understanding of aesthetic theory in India is complete without saying few words about Rasa and Bhava, which are the two pillars of aesthetic emotion. Bharat Muni devotes one whole chapter to the discussion of rasa. Na bhava vino asti rasa, na bhava rasa varjita, because both are integrated. Aesthetic delight can never occur without an emotional response, nor an artistic emotion without aesthetic delight. So, what this theory is about is that the ultimate aim of any type of creative performance, such as literature, painting, dance, or drama, is to create an aesthetically transformed emotional state that touches the heart of the audience. Technically called rasa, it is primarily a spectator-centric theory. Rasa really means aesthetic flavor or of any or some fundamental original forms of emotion like love, fear, heroism, anger, disgust, etc., which are represented and transfigured by a performance in visual arts and painting or sculpture. The rasa concept provides the compositional expressions of iconic images of gods and goddesses in traditional architecture and practice. So rasa is the emotive and psychological approach to the arts, and it is closely linked to pleasurable human emotions. It can transform into ecstatic bliss, eventually creating self-fulfillment, self-realization, and spiritual illumination. According to Natya Shastra Bharat Muni, I'm just going to touch it briefly. There are 8 primary emotions: Shringhara, Hasya, Karuna, Rautra, Veera, Bhayanak, Vibhatsa, Adbhuta. Each has a color and deity. And according to the aesthetics, well, these are, I mean, all of you would be knowing it, who are practitioners of dance and performances. But it's good for students to know. I think you should look at this and understand what is being said. Okay, next, let's see the next, more complex. No, ye nahi. Where does it have this one? The unified structure. So you see, what Bharata has done is to create what I call an ecosystem of the understanding of rasa and bhava. So minutely, he has gone into each and every human emotion and how it gets integrated. How does bhava arise? So basically, he says, according to the theory of aesthetic, rasa is created by merging vibhava, anubhava, vyabhachari bhav together. It implies that through the association of permanent and emotional feelings, fleeting emotions, vyabhachari bhav, which are 43 in number by the way, stimulating determinants, vibhava, and the consequent experience of rasa comes into being in the heart of the Sahridaya or Rasik. It's a very complicated theory, but you should know that such a theory exists. And the words for the aesthete are Sahridaya and Rasika. Sahridaya simply means one of similar heart. Now, what is interesting that he, in Natya Shastra, he speaks about 8 rasas, but we have such a dynamic I would say, culture of Abhinav Gupta, have simplified this whole explanation, and I just read a passage from there. The theory is as follows. Watching a play or reading a poem for the sensitive reader, Sir Hriday, entails a loss of sense of present time and space. Like we're all listening, to a lecture, or we're watching a play, or we're looking at a dance, It's like for a moment we are there, we forget everything else. We're in a different space and time. All worldly considerations for the time being cease. Since we are not indifferent to what is taking place, our involvement must be of purer variety than we usually experience. We are not directly and personally involved, so the usual medley of desires and anxieties dissolve. Our hearts respond sympathetically, Hriday Samvada, but not selfishly. Finally, the response becomes total, all-engrossing, and we identify with the situation depicted. The ego is transcended, and for the duration of the aesthetic experience, the normal waking I is suspended. Once this happens, we suddenly find that our responses are unlike anything we have experienced. We find ourselves in an unprecedented state of mental and emotional calm. The purity of our emotion and the intensity of it takes us to a higher level of pleasure than we could know before we experience sheer, undifferentiated bliss. Ananda Eka Ghana. So with Abhinav Gupta, we have arrived at the same inner terrain as the mystic. This is the great contribution. And only India has the golden key. So please don't miss that golden key and keep looking at modern art. I've written a lot about modern art, and modern art is deeply entrenched in split consciousness, social consciousness that you're talking about. And so this is, look at, and these are theories, 4th century BC, 5th century, 8th century, there's so much going on. And I have only given you a drop of it, the superficial drop in this lecture. The point is, even the rasa theory has been discussed throughout by different people. Different commentators, and different bhashakars, and so many different intellectuals. So the concept of rasa has a tremendous influence on the arts. The theory gives artistic expression to a range of emotions and in turn provides guidelines to creators. So rasa becomes a bridge between creator and the audience. And we have already said that it is based on the philosophy of rasa swad or aesthetic engagement. My last point, I know I've taken too much time. Thus, Indian art is essentially holistic and addresses a person's physical, psychological, cosmological and emotional health. Then we come to healing. Contemporary scholars influenced by universal acceptance of the rasa theory of emotions are researching its applicability and connection with psychology, cognitive sciences, ye aapka बारे में जो बोल रहे थे Manindra ji, and philosophy of mind to explore the artistic experience of emotions and its relationship to human consciousness. New Age theorists of dance have been exploring dance application beyond entertainment. The theory is rooted in the understanding of the ideal moving system of the body where there is simultaneous symmetrical movement, SSM, and the impact on neurological aspects of the cell, looking at both the sides of the brain. In this dance therapy, both sides of the body perform the same movement. The SSM system helps advance coordination, balance and motor skills and develops bodily flexibility. And this form of therapy believes in dancing our hearts out, that's how it moves. Now, I'm not a specialist in this, so I'm not going to go further. But I want to make one more point about music and then I'll stop. Traditional therapies that seek non-verbal communication with the body are evolving to manage psychological health, body sensations and breath cycles and bring order to one's emotional states. Music therapies are essentially auric. Traditional music records the magical and transcendental capacities of ragas. Up next दिखाइएगा सर. हाँ, this is my favorite. हाँ, तानसेन ने क्या कमाल दिखाया, कमाल दिखा दिया, उसके बारे में कुछ शब्द बोलना चाहती हूँ मैं. And known as so ragas are the soul of classical music. Tansen is known for his fabled Deepak Rag. This fire-igniting melody is believed to have sparked uncontrollable blazes of heat and fire when Tansen sang at Akbar's 16th century royal palace. The heat generated currents from his body blaze as flames burn everything in the atmosphere. The legend holds that extinguishing the fire requires the bringing and the melody of Rag Magha. So एक तरफ fire की बात, heat की बात, heat generating, दूसरी बात आपकी राग मेघ की हो रही है. However legendary this may appear, behind the ragas there is a hidden sign of swaras and its impact on our emotional and psychological selves. In India we have a legacy of sacred recitation and we've all gone through it. आप कहीं भी sacred recitation पे जाइए, स्तुति, स्तवा, reading of sacred texts, congregational singing, chanting of hymns and sacred texts with significant therapeutic potential. Traditional music theory relates the 7 chakras, now we come to my subject, of the subtle body with 7 notes, nada. You know how nada becomes 7, each more nuanced than the previous one. Ragas are linked to the 6 seasons of the year and the 12 zodiac signs. I mean, it is, it's a complicated complexes that they have put together. The textual evidence of this is discussed in texts such as Sangeet Kalpatru and Sarang Dev Sangeet Ratnakar. The scientific basis of this is that sound waves, and this is a basis found in mantra chants as well, all over the world now. Lot of speculation is going on what mantras do to us, I mean, I know when I was a student in Oxford, I had gone to America and somebody put an ECG on, some strange kind of contractions, and they told me that I was high, so it was all right, it was somehow or the other. But I was surprised that, in America they've created these huge contraptions to find out what is the effect of mantras, So the scientific basis of is that sound waves carry subtle energy that immediately impacts human psychological states. Music has the potency to transform psychological states when the psychological and emotions change. The chemistry also changes and the latter internal secretion creates a sympathetic resonance. Anatadvani, if you want to be more visible, and transforms the whole self, demonstrating that sound waves can produce psychic effects. So now I come to the end and I go back to my adorable Guru Bharat Muni and his last statement, which I think comes to what you have said and you have said and you have said and I have tried to say. The arts are given the highest status, like pursuing the high ideals of the Purusharthas, Dharma, Kama, Moksha, Dharma. Hence, pursuing any form of art will attain the same blessed goal of liberation and enlightenment that the masters of Vedic knowledge and performers of Vedic ritual attain. So how they have brought arts to that level, that you are going to attain the same thing if you follow it. If you completely disembody it of a symbolism and also its craftsmanship and its philosophy, then I guess one can't say where it leads you. So this is the classical theory. And the sad part is that classics are not taught in any university. आप इतने बच्चे जो हैं आप यहाँ आए हैं colleges से, the classics have to be taught. The contribution of Kalidas and our mathematicians, and particularly post-Gandhara period, is just amazing. And I think you all should stand up to that and go to Modi ji. We want to learn all this. हम लोग तो बैठे ही हैं थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ाने के लिए, बाकी आप लोग हमें पढ़ाएंगे एक दिन. Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me and for presenting some of the views. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. It was indeed a very enriching session, we must say that.